We are back and ready to go with match number 1 of the day and of the season as well. It is going to be cheonsu versus Shaxy. And just a reminder in case you've just decided to join us and missed our whole lovely intro, they are playing a different format now. It's 4 classes, which means there is a protect and a ban that goes on for each player. So they can guarantee to have one deck available to them and they can ban away one of the others. So what classes have these players brought, Derek?
So in the first phase, where they both get to protect one of their decks, obviously at the same time without knowledge of what the other person has protected, we see Shaxy protecting his warrior deck. I would say somewhat wisely. I think warrior at the moment is a very good kind of jack of all trades, where it doesn't really have any auto-lose matchups, as we saw in some previous metas where, you know, the control decks would just shut it down, or some of the combo decks even. And cheonsu, on the other hand, is going with the Reno Hunter that he is protecting here. Pretty surprisingly, for Masters Tour Soul, this was a big standout deck for me, with players like RNG Liss and here in Grandmasters Staz as well, doing very, very well with the Reno Hunter. A bit of a surprise standout deck for me, but it has been doing very, very well and is, I believe, the second most represented individual archetype here in Asia Pacific week 1, so it's not too surprising.
Yeah, just a quick intro for you here. Those are the players, but also as well the Divine Shields there will represent the protects and the grayed out ones you'll be more used to from other years of Hearthstone, representing the bans. The big one for me though is not only is the Hunter being protected by cheonsu, which really does surprise me, because I'll talk about Hunter shortly, but the Druid being banned as well. This is a Malygos Quest Druid, which I didn't think a lot of players really respected.
Yes, I would definitely put my... I would say that as well. Masters Tour Soul, we saw pretty much only quest druids with the King Feoris combo, where you just go wide on the board and you try and win with Savage Roar and all that stuff. Another Malygos nonsense tossed in there as well, which is pretty surprising to see. I'm not entirely sure how it lines up against a lot of the kind of slower matchups, which I would be kind of interested to see, like the Control Bomb Warrior that we see there from cheonsu. I think against the Rogue, it's going to be a little bit more of a standard just aggro versus mid-rangey Druid matchup.
I think it does good versus Hunter. I'll say that from my experience, at least on both sides.
That makes sense.
Because the Druid normally doesn't really care about secrets, because none of the, oh no, you've sniped one of my minions that's massive anyway, because it's probably buffed. Or it doesn't really care so much. And then once it gets going with the quest being completed, and with the current iterations of the Highlander Hunters being quite slow and not super aggressive a lot of the time, it means that you've got the time to activate that quest, which means suddenly Druid just goes off. And Hunter, not really known to heal that much, so if you play Malygos, you can end up using Elise to go Malygos and then, you know, Moonfire 4 times if you want for just lethal, because that often just does get the job done.
That's true, and that is the problem with the Druid deck, is that given that they have untapped potential, where the quest is to have unspent mana at the end of your turn 4 times, they can pretty much complete that by turn 5 or 6 every single time. It's very, very easy for them to consistently do that. And then your 2 options after that are either to kill them before they can do that. The Rogue's generally going to try and do that, kill them nice and quick, or outlast them afterwards, which I've seen the Warrior do fairly consistently. The removal that Warrior has at its disposal lines up very, very well against the more kind of token variants of the deck. Against the Malygos versions, I'm not quite so sure that you can do some real nonsense there with
real tricky
Elise
stuff
in your hand. It gets pretty messy.
Yeah, so I am, you know, a little bit upset that the Druid's going to be banned out, but we can see what the matchup is going to be for the first one. So we can see it's going to be Warrior versus the Hunter. So it's going to be Shaxy's Warrior, which is the control one, right? Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's the control, because there was a fair few archetypes of Warrior knocking around this week, especially in the Asia Pacific region. So it's Control Warrior versus this Highlander Hunter. And what do you make of this matchup? Because I've been telling you before we even got here that I'm not a huge fan of Highlander Hunter. I think at least the current builds aren't that great, even though the stats may just tell me I'm completely wrong. But I feel like versus Warrior, Warrior just doesn't have much to deal with. It can kind of just sit there and let Hunter do stuff, and it removes a few things, and then it's ahead. It's weird.
This is the bad matchup, I think, for Reno Hunter. This is really not what you want to face, because I think the big realization for me about Reno Hunter is, about Highlander Hunter, is generally when you think of Highlander decks, they're relative to like mid-range or control-y a lot of the time, I think, and they use their power cards to pull them ahead in the mid to late stages of the game. This Highlander Hunter is much more aggressive. It runs the Secret package, Secret Keeper, as well as Sunreaver Spy, and as you see this Warrior deck here, it's not afraid of aggressive strategies whatsoever. All this stuff in the early game, the 4 1-drops, now Frightened Flunky as an extra bit of taunt thrown in there with Saviors of Uldum, Restless Mummy, the sheer amount of removal that card represents is quite terrifying. Which means basically the Hunter's just going to run out of value.
Yeah, also as well, I think a star in the Control Warrior deck that not too many people have been talking about so much is Plague of Wrath. I think it's insane. It's like just third brawl that always wins. I mean, because you class a win as clearing the board, right?
Yeah.
So there's 3 brawls to deal with the 1 Zul'jin, effectively, the way I see it, which means you are very likely to be able to deal with that board. And after Zul'jin, what does this Highlander Hunter have? There's no Dire Frenzy tactics going on. It's not like the mid-range hunters before. But let's take a look at cheonsu's deck and see exactly what this is made of. See, now you see the thinking ahead of this graphic. You thought, oh, the deck list spills over, but only a little bit. Well, we can fill it up now with all these cards from these Highlander lists. But let's talk about this deck.
Yeah, this is the pretty much standard build, I would say, of Reno or Highlander Hunter. I need to get out of the habit. Highlander Hunter at the moment. A lot of the cards that were in there I found at the start, like the Hunter's Pack that had a quest, a weapon, a secret, a weapon, and a beast to your hand. All those kind of value cards seem to have fallen by the wayside in this deck, and it's got a lot more stripped down. You're seeing a lot of low curve in there, huge amount of 2-drops, mainly to make way for all the secrets that are floating about in there, which goes beautifully in combination with Subject 9. And basically, you're just trying to get the board early on, push a lot of damage, and close things out with King Crush summoned by Dino Tamer Bran for 8 damage of charge.
Yeah, and this is really what scares me. If you think way back in Season 1 of Grandmasters, Secret Hunter versus Control decks was terrible.
It was garbage.
Because you just ignore the secrets. They don't matter. They don't exist. And this is just made even worse, I think, by it being a Highlander deck, which means you do the thing you do well less consistently, which makes it even a harder matchup. And against Warriors specifically, King Crush coming out on turn 7 from Bran, cool. 8 damage isn't so hot. I've seen Warriors climb a lot of armor. Yes, there's a Boom nerf. There's some nerfs coming for next week, but right now, Boom's still king. So I think this is going to be an uphill climb here for cheonsu.
I think it is as well, especially as I'm having to get my mind out of the Specialist headset where I'm thinking like, oh, well, he can slot in High Mains and Tundra Rhinos. Nope.
He could have.
He could have, yeah, exactly, but not anymore. This is, what you see is what you get now, and if he loses with this Hunter deck, he can queue it up again. Obviously, this is the Conquest format where when you win with a deck, you're done with it. So thankfully for cheonsu, if he loses to this Warrior, he doesn't have to face it again. That would mean Shaxy is just 1 game away from heading through to a 1-0 start in Grandmasters Season 2.
Yeah, remember, this is best of 3, and we kick it off. Shaxy on the top on the Warrior versus cheonsu on the Hunter, and Dino Tamer Bran being kept in the opening hand. And this is where, for me, the joy of a new expansion really comes in. Especially, and I'll say this right now, people might just say I'm a shill or something, but this expansion's sweet.
Oh,
there
I love this
so
expansion.
many sick
it's a
cards,
really good one.
so many. And already, it's not only like level 1, what deck archetypes are good. And then once you start narrowing that down, you get to, mulligan strategies. Like, this is where it really gets hard, at least for me. I find it very difficult to work mulligans out, past, going on certain websites and just ordering by mulligan win rate. But, the real in-depth stuff that even top pro players argue over pretty consistently is quite difficult. So we'll see how cheonsu's mulligan plays out, but Shaxy's mulligan, as is often the case with that many 1-drops, looks pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Derek's already like,
it's the story of Town Crier, right? You get your 1-drop on 1 and it beautifully smooths out your curve. Shaxy here is in a lovely position. And cheonsu's keep of Dino Tamer Bran, I do find pretty surprising given he had no other good cards at all. Because I think the way this deck works is you have a little bit of leeway in how you can play the mid-game. But generally it's a curve deck, right, is what you want to do. You want to get board early on, push a lot of damage, and then close things out with Bran. I really would not have been too surprised to see him get rid of the Dino Tamer Bran, because an 8/8 usually is just dealt with on turn 7. It's not that hard for Warrior.
Right, and that's the problem. Versus other classes, great. Like Rogue even, can be quite tough for Rogue because they're not playing certain...
Just value trade for them.
Yeah, even you just take a trade and be done. But this is where it's probably going to last all weekend at least, but I will pick holes in Highlander Hunter. I think it's not as powerful as people have made it out to be. And yes, this is a bad matchup, of course, don't get me wrong. but you just played a 2-mana 2/3 that isn't a beast on 2. And now there's going to be a 3-mana 2/4 that also is not a beast on 3, potentially.
cheonsu is now able to find, obviously, Zephyrus the Great, the card that benefits, well, that says if you have no duplicates in your deck, you get to wish for the perfect card. I'm sure you've all seen it by this point. Early on in the game, it can often be used in this deck to find something like Backstab to try and swing tempo in your favor, maybe smooth out your curve by discovering an animal companion to go down on turn 3. But I think in this matchup, he's probably hoping to save it for a little bit later to try and find Tyrion, maybe.
Need more juice, 100%.
Right.
Tyrion's probably the go-to.
Or maybe just extra burst damage. We could see it go for fireballs for lethal, pyroblasts perhaps.
Yep, and a couple of notes just to get ahead of the Twitch chat saying, oh, Zephyrs for this, Zephyrs for that. It can only give basic or classic cards. It does not offer, it will not offer Dino Tamer Brand, for example, to the player. But also, what's going to be highlighted, I think, very quickly, and it makes our job very difficult, is you can nudge what Zephyrus offers you in certain ways by doing certain things, creating certain board states and certain mana totals. And how players manage that can be the difference between winning or losing quite easily. Because I've messed this up many, many times.
Yes.
Because ordering is a thing. I've played Zephyrus and gone, I should have like pinged to make my mana X to then be able to be offered this.
You've got to help him help you.
Yeah.
As apparently one of the Hearthstone developers tweeted out that he's getting another IQ buff on
Oh,
Monday.
really?
Yes, we'll be given even more reliably good options.
Grandmaster's just going to be casted by Zephyrus at this point, isn't it? Let's be honest, it's going to beat us all.
Like a magic 8-ball, it will just tell us a smart thing to say each time.
I'm kind of okay with it. but going into Mass Contender is at least going to get these secrets rolling for cheonsu.
Yeah,
but
very
so much of Control Warrior's plan just does not really care.
I mean, I think this is actually getting to the point where Warrior will start to care for a couple of reasons. This is a 6 health board, so it doesn't die to Dynamatic. Very, very awkwardly shaped for Restless Mummy, I think, importantly. You know, 4 health or 1 health and a couple of secrets. It could get frozen, you know, for all Shaxy knows. It's a bit of a difficult situation. I guess the solace is it's only 5 damage, so he doesn't have to worry yet. It's when an extra piece is added to the puzzle that Shaxy will need to be quaking in his boots a little bit.
Yeah, it's the extension really of the hand that's more what's leaning me towards, you know, our ultimate knowledge as casters seeing both hands is that, oh, well, if extra things get added, there's Brawl, there's Warpath, there's Spot Shield, Slam Removal, there's the Mummy, which Shaxy, if he really wanted to, could have played the Mummy, and if it bounced, and if it didn't, great. You know, and it's something on the board to start trading off, or just be annoying. A lot of the times as Warrior, I've played Mummy as just a card. Just rush into nothing, just play it and say, this is very awkward to kill because it has Reborn, which is one of the new mechanics in the expansion.
And in production, if we could get a mouse over the secret that was summoned by the Masked Contender in addition to the Snake Trap, that would be very useful just to see what Shaxy is working with here. Because he's ruled out now Snipe only, I believe, as one of the options. And I think he went about that the right way with the Devastator there. I think just developing onto the board is perfect.
Because I think because of that Mummy, right? Because if you play it, you can choose whether you want the attack potentially into Freezing Trap to be on the Devastator or the Mummy, and then make your trades either way. Did see the kill command going off there, just to clean it up. And cheonsu now is hitting this point you talked about, Derek, where putting the pressure on, there are these secrets on. We know it isn't Rat Trap, and there are only one-offs. So the potential is Pressure Plate, Freezing Trap, or that's it. Because we know the other one's snakes.
Yeah, or Rat Trap.
Well, we know it's not Rat Trap.
Right,
sorry.
Sorry.
Shaxy doesn't, yes. I wonder if there's ever, because he knows it's not Snipe, maybe just a possibility of a playing Ziliax, although I guess it doesn't get any heal, which means it kind of loses some impact. He's going to get the news now, Snake Trap, and we're going to get the news as to whether it's freezing right now.
Nope. There we go.
So, Pressure Plate?
Yeah, and I'm looking at Warpath now just to clear up the board, because it's expend that or take, what was that, 9 damage? Like,
it's worth it.
A little bit too much. 8 damage, yeah, you just get rid of that.
There's Ziliax to tide you over into a brawl. There's Omega Assembly worst case. And there's still a couple of... Even if you double shield slam something at this point, Shaxy might be getting to the point where he feels comfortable.
It is, and I think cheonsu is, as I would imagine he set out his plan right from the start, not all in on hoping that this King Crush connects twice, but very much his odds would improve drastically if he's able to deal 16 as opposed to the usual 8. Especially as, you know, Zephyrus, when you play it on 10, is very, very likely to offer you Tyrion as a guaranteed bit of extra damage, or even if you just played it on 7, it doesn't have to.
This is the
Dino Tamer
but this is where the knowledge comes in, right? Because you can also play Zephyrus on 8 or 9, and it will often give you Tyrion based on how much mana you've got left as well. So it gets very tricky. You just have to just know it, basically. You have to do it enough times to just know.
Yeah.
This is horrible.
Dino Tamer Bran and the King Crush rushing into Ziliax. Feels absolutely horrendous.
Sorry, I will make some sound effects. Just so you...
It necessitates sound effects. No Dr. Boom available to give rush to these mechs quite yet, so Shaxy has to do it the old-fashioned way, or I guess what will possibly be the new-fashioned way once Dr. Boom gets nerfed in a few days.
My question here now is just armor up double shield slam just absolutely fine. Yes, it's not perfect for Shaxy. You would rather have not only used one, but after King Crush, what are you actually scared of?
Doesn't activate Rat Trap.
Nope.
It's, Pressure Plate doesn't do anything. Yeah.
You know that cheonsu is not running any bouncers in the deck. There's no Brewmaster to bounce Bran back. We've seen some people experiment with it, but I think on the whole, it's decided that it isn't worth, although I wouldn't mind it at all, because you've not only got Bran to bounce, but Zephyrus is always a query. But yeah, I think if you just double shield slams this, it's just okay. It's a little bit annoying, but... Okay, he's taking no damage next turn, and all he's doing is slowly stomping towards Boom, stomping towards some more mech discoveries, maybe some shield blocks for some card draw.
So what does he have to be afraid now? What is Shaxy afraid of in the Hunter deck? It's Zephyrus, which isn't even in the deck. Subject 9, I guess, would be the scariest thing, and then Zul'jin, of course. Zul'jin doesn't even do that much at this point. He would have to get a little bit of extra help.
Overlap secrets that do nothing, like... It gives him a snake trap and a freezing... Was it freezing trap? No, it wasn't. Was it?
A kill command would come down.
Yeah.
Probably got to be snip snap, right? Just because you want stuff
to play them both.
Play, yeah. Well, actually, I guess it depends how he wants to expend his mana, because we could see Ziliax and then Zephyrus Ziliax on this turn to set up for... I don't know, I guess Tyrion next turn, yeah.
I think this is probably just overall better.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if Zephyrus would offer him a 9-drop if he'd played it there. Like Yseramis, perhaps. Or Alexstrasza. I mean, Alexstrasza would be pretty
See, these are all the questions.
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I'm pretty sure a lot of the players also don't know every single scenario that Zephyrus will do X or Y in.
He works in mysterious ways. And so now a lot of removal has been used up by Shaxy. We're talking 2 shield slams, one of the warpaths. This board is not perfect to throw down a brawl onto, so it is again that little bit of chip damage for cheonsu that maybe with the perfect card he would be able to get there.
Now Shaxy's going almost toe for toe. You can play 3 snip snaps and just kind of match the board exactly. I like it.
Wow, I'd rather get hero power than it. Oh no, yeah, Rat Trap, yeah. This all seems right.
Good pickup for cheonsu there, although... Wait, is it?
It's one of the better draws in his deck by miles.
But
I think even if it draws one card...
I think... Does it draw any?
Does it draw any?
Let me check. So, Freezing's in hand.
Snipe's been tracked
over.
Wait,
it's Pressure Plate, right?
Well, Pressure Plate's in play.
Oh, is that
Isn't that the card that's in play from the Masked Contender?
I guess.
I think so, right? Because
so it doesn't draw him anything, right?
Wow, okay, I take it back. I mean, even if it drew him 1 card...
If it drew 1,
it would be one of the better draws in his deck, because his average draw is so low.
Here we go. What are the offerings? The perfect card is not Tyrion.
Cabal Shadow Priest is a nice little tempo swing. to get rid of a snip snap.
I think he needs Ysera.
Really?
Because the problem is, you have to...
Change your mind.
I think I like this, right? Like, if
my worry... Okay, what if Brawl comes down? Right?
you lose the game if you Ysera and he brawls, right?
Well,
Like,
yeah, but you wouldn't play Ysera until there's a clear, and then Ysera's a single minion, your opponents use double shield slam. Is all I was thinking. It's like a one-card refill. It might have been better.
I think the thing is, if you're passing until they brawl, he could just not brawl, right? Like, he could clear things up one by one, develop his own minions, eventually he'd have to trade in. And I think the longer it goes, eventually he's going to find Dr. Boom.
Okay.
I see your point. Like, this is a big committal onto the board. But I think with cheonsu, it's still relatively resistant to brawl because he's got all the death rattles from the snip snaps as well.
My worry at this second in time is Bran is gone, Zephyrus is gone.
Oh yeah.
How does cheonsu actually kill Shaxy?
Well,
Apart from
that's a
this board
fantastic question.
never dying,
That is
which
a
is why I
fantastic
think
question.
maybe you needed Ysera to do something magnificent. Because if Ysera lives for a couple of turns, well, you can make that damage up pretty quickly. But without Ysera, or Tyrion would have been good, of course, as
Tyrion
well.
would have been fantastic.
Then I don't know. And then now you've already got to rewind and say, did cheonsu need to play Zephyrus that turn? Could he have waited till next turn and played Zephyrus into Tyrion? I don't know. I'm not saying he should have, but it was an option, and an option he could almost guarantee. Second brawl.
Double brawl coming down in one turn. I mean, for cheonsu, to be fair to him, it got answered hard. But Shaxy's pretty much out of removal. If cheonsu can develop a board here, maybe it just gets there. I think it's still fairly optimistic because Shaxy has a lot of good draws, but this is far from over, I would say.
And we'll see now, no surprise, cheonsu just going in. cheonsu's like,
100%.
press
If
all
he's
the
got
buttons,
the warpath,
play all the
you
minions.
concede. You concede when the warpath comes down.
He's already seen one warpath, double shield slam, double brawl.
Yeah.
There's Plague, but Plague needs an activator of some kind, and he wouldn't kill any of these 1 health minions. So Plague is a bit of a whiff.
Was that a dynamatic? That was a dynamatic.
Funnily enough, it's a little bit annoying.
Yeah. Actually, I guess with the mechs,
Because there's one extra health on the
right,
board
it's not
than he wants, right?
Perfect. Yeah, okay. It's not as good as I thought it would
He
be.
does Omega Assembly, though.
Yeah, if he can get himself an Omega Devastator first, that would be very juicy.
He's going to go with Taunt Armor. Because he still doesn't want to put Rat Trap for no reason, right? So he can just Taunt into Armor instead. It's an Infested Goblin, a card that has been finding itself into Taunt Warrior variants as well. Very good card. Not only is it a 3-mana 2/3 taunt, which doesn't sound that good, it death rattles into 2 1/1 taunts, which can then get buffed. Going for Tomb Warden, though, the card that, let's be honest, we're all asking the same question. Why is it a mech?
Yeah.
But it's there.
The Rat Trap being felt ever present here for Shaxy, unable to even play the Omega Assembly there at the end.
I love the Devilish.
Not a huge deal, but still just a little bit annoying. As again, cheonsu's getting that chip damage in. I just wonder if he'll be able to get over the blockade that Tomb Warden puts in front of him.
Super Collider's not too shabby, although he's just seeing a deadly shot, so you just play the Tomb Warden and armor up, right?
It trades completely right, so yeah.
And Shaxy isn't looking for value, he's looking to just wipe this board once, and then he'll probably feel like he's safe.
I think he's just wondering if he can survive, right? Because if he can go Super Collider and then follow up with Tomb Warden, that's like kind of
I don't know if it's too greedy.
That's fair.
Bulldozer. Not better than Tomb Warden in this instance. I like it. You've just seen Deadly Shot, and all you've got to do is just hope.
Okay, I guess this definitely has some merit.
Was he seen in case he got something plus Ziliax, maybe? You know, just in an off chance?
I think it's just to set up for a better turn next turn. Like, because Super Collider, if the board has to trade in, is probably not very good. So he'd rather just play, I don't know, Boom Reaver, right? Or just anything for a big mana expenditure. Because I mean, I think Shaxy is looking, as it currently stands, to not proc Rat Trap for the rest of the game.
Yeah, he shouldn't need to, especially with the cards he's discovered from the Omega Assembly.
If you can just find Dr. Boom, this should be plain sailing, especially as cheonsu, with only 9 cards left, is looking, I don't know, I guess in a race to find Zul'jin, because it's slowly getting better. It's still not great as a card, but, you know, Deadly Shot thrown in there now. Tracking is a mixed blessing, I suppose.
Yeah, big ones we're missing, though, is Animal Companion. is not active as far as I can recall.
No,
Which is a big one for Zul'jin, and Unleash the Beast. Those are the big two. And even maybe to a certain extent Mark Shot, because at least it generates you a spell that may do X, you know. But yeah, this is not looking fantastic. cheonsu is doing what he can, have this slime down, this ooze, sorry, down. It's 3-2, but Shaxy just has all the options in the world.
Did you say slime down the ooze instead of slam down the ooze?
I'm going to say yes.
Take it, because that's hilarious.
Yes, I did, Derek. Of course. It was all part of the plan.
I like it.
Oh, no matter what happens to Mega Devastate, it's annoying, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, you're just like, come on. Bow
There's
again.
never a good time
Nice
to
to
see
push
it.
some damage, but
I mean, it's kind of... Does this have to go face?
yes.
Probably,
Facing,
right.
you just
You're
freeze
never
and trap.
winning.
You freeze and trap.
Yeah, you're never winning.
And hope just... Because at least you're guaranteed that you'll get an additional charge, right?
Oh. And I think cheonsu knows, Shaxy knows exactly what that secret is now, so he can play around it very
shield block's
easily.
nice.
Yeah, that's very nice. And again, cheonsu is just very low on any kind of value. The powerhouse cards in Bran and Zephyrus are gone, kill command gone.
Just shield block Harrison, GG.
Yeah, pretty much. It's just...
Because Zul'jin off the top doesn't save it.
Just Jin now.
I don't even think that does it.
Yeah. Probably not.
Remember, he's hitting it
I
for
don't know,
7
if he
this turn
gets
as well.
like the God Draws of Animal Companion into Zul'jin and then gets like Huffer, kill command goes to opponent's face, even then.
I think if he draws Animal Companion and plays it, he's probably just dead anyway.
You're probably correct. Especially as now we're looking at Eternium Rover Warpath, like
Yeah, it's just...
so much stuff can be thrown down.
Dire Frenzy, a good hunter card.
I think we're looking at Flare to draw a card.
Just get closer to Zul'jin. You have to, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
fatigue doesn't really matter that much at this point. It's the only thing that matters is getting to Zul'jin. Ustron, I don't even think draws it.
Yeah, Ziliax, right?
Point. We tracked over it.
Oh, they tracked Ziliax? Oh, okay.
I think so.
And the never-ending onslaught of mechs. Funnily enough,
Don't even need Dr. Boom
and
here.
this is something that is relevant for the future. Is next week Boom will cost 9, so we'll come down later. But this game, yes, big 1-game sample size, of course, but there's no Boom even been played, and it's still been managed. You know, so it's not as if I think obviously it is a nerf, but Warrior is not going to topple over a Boom being 9. Is my main point I'm making here.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, and I think Navi on Twitter had a good read of as we see the concede finally coming down from cheonsu, where Dr. Boom is at, in that it allows control decks to beat mid-range decks, which it shouldn't be able to do.
Right.
Whereas there, I would say the Hunter deck was really playing as more of an aggro deck than
it wants to play as an aggro deck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It just wants to curve out nice and early. It doesn't have enough meat in the mid to late stages of the game to be an aggro deck, to be a mid-range deck, sorry. Which is why it falls down to the might of Warrior, which we saw there from Shaxy. There's a reason why he's protecting that in his shield phase of this Conquest with a shield format. Because it is just very good against the vast majority of these aggressive decks.
Yeah, and this is one of the questions, isn't it? So we see the two shields go against each other, and cheonsu lost out on his shielded hunter, and Shaxy took a win with the Warrior. So it's just game 1, and we're going to be mixing up, of course, as this is the new Shield Conquest format. But don't go anywhere, we'll be right back as we move on to game number 2.
Welcome, recruits. I'm Alec Dawson, and today I'm here to teach you what it takes to be part of the League of Explorers. We need all the help we can get, because it's time to save old Doom. First things first. Being an explorer can be dangerous. The League of Evil has already stolen Dalaran, but now they're unleashing plagues in Old Doom, and they keep shuffling bombs into our decks. Luckily, Old Doom is stocked with ancient treasures that may give us a chance. We've already sent some of our best explorers to retrieve these powerful artifacts, but we need you to go out into the field too. Here's your quest: raid the Sky Temple. That may seem like a lot of spells, but you'll get there faster than you think. Once we complete our quest, we'll get the hero power Ascendant Scroll, which adds a Mage spell to our hand and reduces the cost by 2. Ascendant Scroll allows us to load up on cheap spells or cards like Archmage and Tinnitus. Because if there's a way to defeat evil, it's fireballs to the face. Make no mistake though, the League of Evil has been leveling up too. Evil was powerful in Dalaran, but now they discovered something even more nefarious. Teamwork. Here's Weaponized Wasp, one of Hagatha's new secret weapons. The laser on its head, courtesy of Blastmaster Boo. Weaponized Wasp plays well in aggressive lackey decks that look to take board control early. In Saviors of Uldum, expect to see lackey build-arounds in Shaman and Warlock. But don't worry, we also have a secret weapon. Bees! No, really, one of our junior explorers found a bee-controlling device deep in Kartut's tomb. It took us a few days to decipher the instructions, but it's quite the powerful tool. Here they come now, it's bees! A new druid spell. This efficient removal spell excels in token-based druid decks. Need some extra pains for Knife Juggler? Bees! Need some extra bodies for Soul of the Forest? Bees! Need anything at all? Bees! All right, that's all we have for today, Explorer. We've got one more training session to go before you'll be ready for the dangers of the desert. So sit tight, and I'll see you out there in Saviors of Uldum.
Darker than they've ever been. As evil descends from the skies, the world cries out, how will we survive? Out of the hall of explorers, and up from the dusty tombs, they grab their whips and fedoras. These legends of the past know exactly what to do. There might be magic monsters, mummies in the markets, and ancient mysticism. But this league's gonna save Uldum.
We are back and ready to move on to match number 2 between cheonsu and Shaxy in game number 1. Game number 2, I mean, not match number 2. Shaxy took a win with his Warrior versus cheonsu's Hunter in, I would say, one of the more one-sided matchups that we have in the meta, at least currently. So it was definitely a tough one for cheonsu, but as this is the new Shield Conquest format, we are moving on, as we can see there. We do have some other classes to play in this match. So Shaxy has his Mage, or I believe that is, it is his Mage or his Priest to take a win with, and cheonsu has to still get 2 wins with the 3 classes he has of it.
Yeah, Shaxy there with the 3 classes he's left with that haven't been banned, which are the 3 classes that are going to be nerfed going into next week of Grandmasters.
Very true.
With Extra Arms, Luna's Pocket Galaxy, and Conjurer's Calling, and Dr. Boom, all taking a hit. In addition, I guess, to Barnes if you're still playing Wild. Which is pretty surprising. I think it means, you know, he's got his head pretty straight in terms of what the good decks at the moment are. I think, you know, the only argument you could say is whether Rogue fits somewhere in there, or I guess Hunter actually for Shaxy. But for the main part, the Warrior Mage Priest combo, I think is very, very solid at this point. And it means that going up next against the Rogue, the Warrior, or the Hunter left from cheonsu, I'm not seeing any real weaknesses available to him. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the actual the Mage left untouched, kind of surprisingly, because I think against the Rogue and the Hunter, the Reno Mage can kind of struggle against the aggression that those 2 decks can throw down.
Yeah, well, funny enough, I do believe we are going to be having Mage versus Rogue as
he is
game number 2. So this is going to be an interesting one here because let's just wait till we get confirmation it's Mage versus Rogue,
Sure.
but I'm pretty confident. Because the Rogue decks, it kind of, I think a lot of players thought Rogue didn't really get anything, this expansion, anything of note, outside of exactly the Pharaoh Cat. But one, I think that card is very powerful, and two, Rogue already had good stuff. Maybe they didn't need more, and I think the realization is starting to kick in where it's like, Rogue does a good job of killing you very quickly, so it still does that. Nothing's changed in that instance, except maybe some of the other decks and classes have got a little bit slower.
And I think that's the realization. It's not that they got anything new, particularly in Rogue, although Hooked Scimitar and Pharaoh Cat are very powerful cards. It's more the development in the playstyle, the recognition of where Rogue fits in the meta at the moment, which is not, I would argue, as a kind of mid-rangey value, but still relatively aggressive deck, as we saw with Burgle Rogue last expansion. You know, there was still Leroy, the Shadow Steps, often the Waggle picks as well, but it was a little bit slow to counteract a lot of the Mages and the Warriors, whereas now I think they're trying to just sneak in a win by like turn 6 a lot of the time, and I think that's a great spot for the Rogue to be in.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you've seen some of the interactions on Twitter, but Admirable was talking about minus Miscreants plus Wolf Riders in Rogue, which, you know what? I've heard Admirable suggest a lot of crazy things in my time. Not the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Honestly, not ridiculous. When you play the deck a little bit, you quickly realize, coin Hooked Scimitar, I could trade, or I could just go face,
just whack him
because
in
my
the
deck
face.
is all damage. And a lot of the time, it's do they have Ziliax or not? But even then, you have answers to that, right? In Backstab and SI. Like, it's not absurd
Or
to just start going
more
as
damage.
aggressive as possible.
Yeah, but let's take a look. Shaxy's Reno Mage. I had to stall for a second and be like, can I call this one Reno Mage? Oh,
This
yeah,
one
'cause
is
it's Mage.
Reno
It's got
Mage,
Reno in it.
yes.
Yeah, this is
Highlander
kind
Mage.
of the talk of the town right now. A lot of players jump straight to Mage as the Reno or Highlander class, and
With good reason.
yes, the deck is very strong, although I still think it's very easy to bring an inconsistent build. I think it
Fair.
can be built very wrong in some instances, and if you get it wrong, you will lose a lot more than you will win. But I think this, I believe, is almost card for card, if not card for card, APX Voids list that you got top 1 with. Top 1. Rank 1, legend. And I think it's mainly one card that I see more commonly now that I didn't see before was the Bone Wraith. Putting, which is a very solid taunt stall minion on 4, and then you move into turn 5 with, say, Ziliax or maybe another 4-drop, and then the Kahut Defender is very powerful. It's almost halfway between a Sludge Belcher and a Antique Heal Bot.
Right, and I think these Reborn minions slot in very, very nicely into Mage, with obviously the fact that you need a bit of time to get your combos going with Luna's Pocket Galaxy, but mainly Conjurer's Calling. It works so nicely with these minions that have a kind of pseudo-death rattle effect in the Reborn of coming back to life with 1 health. It means you can, whether you go for the original body and get a 1 health left over with Conjurer's Calling, or if you just Conjurer's Calling the Reborn minion, the 1 health left over is a perfect target a lot of the time to resurrect for 2 minions of the same cost.
And you gotta think about it as well. We talked a lot about there was the part-time scavenger played in Mage, a solid 4-drop that probably lives so you can then get value from it. Arcane Keysmith is a great 4-drop to Conjurers. We know it's really good that almost always survives, something with Reborn. So that does help a lot, especially for that Bone Wraith. But he is going up against cheonsu, and I know you're a bit of a Rogue aficionado. So what would you make of this matchup? Is this going to just be the Rogue destroying the Mage here?
I think it's not quite so black and white as that a lot of the time, but I definitely favour the Rogue. I've been playing a lot of this deck at Ladder, and at the top of Legend, you're facing a lot of Reno Mages. Let me just say, there's a whole bunch of people testing out different builds of it, trying to find the ideal list. And it's a phrase I never thought I'd hear myself say, but so often I hear myself thinking, play Galaxy. I dare you, please play Pocket Galaxy. Because they spend 5 mana or coin it out and do nothing immediately, and then they're just dead the next turn because you put on so much tempo early on. I would say especially with this list, which runs a little bit more early game meat, the Hench Clan Thugs and the Fairy Dragons is not a combo that I've actually seen put together. I often see one or the other a lot of the time to go for your early game combos. But I mean, it makes I think a very, very strong anti-mage list at the start.
Yeah, and this is where we're going to have to start to see one Shaxy's mulligan on how to deal with this, because you can see how aggressive, especially on coin, turn 2 to 3 has to be in this deck. It's absurd. Almost just not decides the game in terms of decisions, but decides the pace of the game to turn 2 and 3 from the Rogue. And Shaxy will be looking for Swampoos, Ray of Frost, Doomsayer, Frostbolt, maybe even Zephyrus if there's a
Oh, big
good,
time.
you know, a good answer
Yeah.
at that point in the early game. Frost Novas as well. Anything to just stop the initial push and then try and do some of the heavily powerful things afterwards to try and catch up. But I do feel that when I was playing some aggro rogue myself, I was like, oh no, a mage. Dead.
Yeah.
It's like it felt very, very good to play against after being oppressed by mages for the past, few weeks or so.
It did indeed. The rogue here with a pretty interesting starting hand, I would say. Deck hand is not a card you usually keep because it's so weak early on. But when you're going first, it's one of those cards that I still don't keep in my mulligan, but I'm never that sad when I end up with it after the mulligan because, you play it on turn 1. What are they going to do? Coin ping it? If they do that, you're pretty happy most of the time. A situation when you're not happy, however, is when this happens as cheonsu.
Okay, so my first question about the hooked Scimitar when I saw it was, I get why the card could be good, but does it just never work with Waggle Pick? So now my question to you, Derek, is how do you play this hand? Because it is weird and awkward and clunky.
That's a good question. So what are the options? We could see, obviously, dagger. Obviously, you're daggering this turn. Whether you swing is pretty interesting because next turn we could see Deadly Poison Dread Corsair for the most immediate minion presence. We could just see Hooked Scimitar Swing Face. We could see Redagger Deadly Poison again. There's so many different ways to play this. I'm honestly not sure what the way to go is.
Yeah, well,
it's a miserable hand.
It's very, very awkward, isn't
Everything
it, in
feels
every
terrible.
way. And on the opposite side, Zephyrus does come down and offers Shaxy the usual suspects, I would say, outside of... Okay, here's lesson 1 for Zephyrus. I think the first lesson you learn. If you play it on 2 against an empty board, it will give you Wild Growth, Animal Companion, or Brightwing. Because the weapon was equipped, the Ooze was offered instead of the Brightwing, so it makes sense. But I am a little bit surprised at Wild Growth, Derek, because normally I only hit that Wild Growth when I have Pocket Galaxy in hand.
Me too. I was definitely expecting to see the Ooze coming down there because he had the turn 3 play already, right, with Snip Snap. So the curve was not Shaxy's biggest consideration. And, obviously I'm letting Cast Division get to myself somewhat here. He cannot see the Hooked Scimitar and the Waggle Pick. But they run 4 weapons in the deck and 2 Deadly Poisons. The chances of you facing down a scary weapon are incredibly
Not
high.
being funny, but Shaxy's put an Ooze in his deck.
Yeah.
So he wants Ooze, he wants that weapon removal option. I wouldn't even be too bothered about Animal Companion. I think it normally does a decent job versus Rogue, just as a card to sort of stem the bleeding, so to say.
cheonsu's decision in these early turns makes a lot of sense to try and get the most amount of damage on the board early on with the Dread Corsair coming down last turn. The one thing that I'm not certain on is whether or not he should have even attacked turn 2, because then we could have seen Dagger turn 2 pass, Deadly Poison on both charges of the Hero Power Dagger, and then he could have gone swing on 3, swing on 4, equip a full durability Waggle Pick, which obviously means he's got a lot of weapon charges kind of clogging up his hand, but that does eke out the most amount of damage from his cards, which is something to consider. He could take this a little bit slower with the Captain Greenskin, but at the same time, I don't hate getting the Waggle Pick online as soon as possible.
I think as well there's a point where you can go for value, but if you want to rush, every point of damage matters, as we see another Hooked Scimitar in the hand. But also, there's a fear of Ooze, right? If you leave that weapon floating on full durability, it gets oozed, then you've just lost a lot for want of trying to get some value in.
Especially as cheonsu had seen Zephyrus, but not the Wild Growth. And
at that point, yes.
I think, if he's played the matchup, he'll know that Zephyrus would have offered Ooze there because it's a weapon in play. And honestly, I would make the read that they pick it.
Yeah,
I would
pick
expect
Ooze,
them to pick Ooze, yeah. Because now for Shaxy, he's got 2 Snip Snaps on board here on turn 5. But even with this dreadful hand from cheonsu, he's taken a big chunk of damage, which he does have to stop very quickly.
Ray of Frosting back. Because he's got Nova as well, so he could Nova, Ray of Frost, get some work done. Trade off this board and end up with 4 1-1s. Not horrible.
Yeah, I guess it's about what his game plan is at the moment. Like, how much does he want to stall versus actually trade and win back board control? And I think given his hand doesn't have any of the broken stuff going on at the moment, like 1-mana minions off Pocket Galaxy or Conjurer's Calling, winning back board manually is yeah, probably the way he has to go, rather than cheese it out with freezes.
The scariest part now for Shaxy is if cheonsu has Leroy, he just loses.
Yes.
Pretty much.
Cool.
Maybe now with that maybe that's why he left the sheep up as
frozen,
well.
yeah.
Decided to make that play because then the weapon attack may bounce the sheep and not something that's damaged. Because imagine if he plays Leroy, he's just lost the game.
Yeah.
Even though he doesn't, it's not lethal, he loses.
Unless he finds obviously Kartu or Ziliax.
So many
Or Bone Wraith, I suppose.
Yeah.
Maybe that would limit the mana enough, I'm not sure. With cheonsu now, does he go backstab on the sheep first to guarantee a bounce on the SI? I guess so.
Question asked, question answered. I don't think he has to.
But
He could swing and just replay.
cheonsu's his own man. He can do whatever he pleases.
Well, yeah, who am I to tell cheonsu what to do? I just mean he could
Could've just
swing,
ended it, who am
bounce
I?
the sheep, replay the sheep, play the scimitar, and then play SI. And just hold the backstab, that's all. I mean, you can do this for more face damage, so fine. It still does kind of the same thing. It's the value you have of having a backstab, but I think with sap in hand, this is fine.
Yeah, I think I like cheonsu's plan a little bit more here. Like, it's not perfect because it doesn't set up lethal.
But who
next
is,
turn.
Derek? Who is?
You're looking at him.
I'm not looking at a picture of Surrender. What are you on about?
You and Surrender, my dude. I don't know what it is. Well, actually, correction. I know exactly what it is. He is. I can't argue with that. I was going to make a joke, but just look at him.
There you go.
Again, it does not set up perfect lethal, only getting him 6 damage available right now, but I think it illustrates the game plan he should be going for very nicely, which is top deck lethal. There's a lot of outs he can go for, or top deck Myras. And both of those things point towards getting as much damage to face as possible and pray that there's no Ziliax.
Where do you fall on the Zephyrus in a Myra's Rogue?
I'm not playing
Build.
it in my version. I generally prefer a slightly...
Bash him in the face style?
Yes, like the difference between mine and Ball Control / TJ's High Legend list is I play 2 Thugs and they play 1 Fairy Dragon, 1 Zephyrus.
Right.
And I can fully see their reason.
Weapon number 20 of the
This isn't lethal, is it? If he can re-dagger over the...
Wait, he swings?
1 mana off, I think.
Yeah, because he can't activate the SI initially,
Yes,
is
yeah,
the problem. See, now if he'd kept a backstab,
Well,
it
no,
wouldn't
that's
matter
not-
because the
that's not
SI
the
would
problem.
be dead.
Yes, well,
I was joking.
yes, sorry. Difficult to tell
Close, though.
sometimes.
It is. A lot of my jokes do sound like I'm being serious.
So, do you sap? You don't sap the giant, right? Because even if Conjurer's Calling comes down, actually, how much mana would the giant cost? This is a tough turn.
Wait, so do you not sap SI? Oh, you...
Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
tough
yeah,
because
yeah.
like he could very well just completely override the scimitar with the waggle pick this turn. I think that's very reasonable.
If only the pick was the scimitar and the other way around.
Poetic, Raven. Poetic.
Because it just means that he could break it now
Yes,
and then
yeah,
re-equip
yeah.
a weapon instead of having the awkward point of not breaking it. Ooh.
He's got to swing face.
cheonsu
You,
doesn't
you
even know.
always swing face. You always swing
Yeah.
face. I can
Cash
see that he
that
might want
damage
to swing the waggle
Just
pick
pass?
first. I think this is reasonable because he needed to figure out some maths for Conjurer's Calling as to whether he needed to bounce the giant first, because if it was replayable with a Conjurer's Calling on this turn, which I think it would have been, right? 8 cards in hand, it would have cost 5. So giant plus Conjurer's Calling would have been playable on this turn.
But this doesn't allow him to lethal without swinging. Doesn't matter. But that was very interesting game there. cheonsu just literally could not hold all his weapons at the same time. But cheonsu happy for the win there, and even in a 1-on-1, because let's not forget, this is still best of 3, which means both these players, they need to win 1 game. Whoever wins next game takes it all, and it's getting a bit... This is already dicey, and I already still am thinking about the way the format has worked so far, and were the bans right, were the protects right? I don't even know anymore. And now, with cheonsu having his rogue removed as an option, that is going to affect what cheonsu and Shaxy pick as their next matchup.
Says a lot about the matchup as well, doesn't it? That he started with, what, a hand full of weapons, no minions to play early on, start just swinging face, doing what Rogue does nowadays, and It worked. It got him over the finish line. I think Shaxy could have made a better defensive play with that pick of the Ooze. I'm going to go back to that again because it was one of the real decision points for Shaxy there. After that, it was just a case of he drew no heal, which happens. There's not much in the deck, to be honest.
There really isn't much in the deck, yeah.
And I think with a pick of the Ooze, instead of the choice he went for on the Wild Growth, we could have seen just Snip Snap on 3, follow up with the Ooze to take out the weapon, and he would have been sitting pretty.
And honestly, I don't know if you remember, but in our Discord a week or so ago, I was playing Reno Mage, and I was like, my win rate with this deck is absurdly low. And I'm talking about...
I was watching you on stream when that was happening.
It was bad, though.
You were just getting dumpstered.
But I wasn't... I just expect Sol type responses here. I wasn't playing horribly, right? I was playing at least okay, and I was getting wrecked. And that game felt like when I play Reno Mage.
Yeah.
Because so the second you just don't draw that card that will stabilize you, the game just ends. It can be that savage, and I'm already waiting for...
Yeah, so it felt like your game where you make an obvious mistake that loses you the game, and then, oh, what could I have done?
Thanks, Derek.
I'm joking. There was. I mean, after that decision point that I disagree with, I agree. There was nothing Shaxy could have done from that point on.
It's very interesting though that, I mean, Shaxy's a good player. We saw that last season.
Big time.
But the decision to go Wild Growth, it feels so obvious with Luna's in hand. It gets you to Luna's that it's just good. But without it, I'm not sure what
I mean,
it
was an expensive hand, right? It was the classic Druid thing. If you have a handful of expensive stuff, you want to get there.
But that turn could have just been either an Ooze or even, like I say, the Animal Companion, and buys you a turn and then so on and so on. It's very interesting. But now we can see that with the win, with the road, with cheonsu, he has Hunter or Warrior versus Shaxy's Mage or Priest. And Priest we've not seen yet, but it caused a bit of a stir in Seoul.
It did, doing surprisingly well. I believe, at least before the finals, I didn't get the statistics after the final day, but heading into the final day, the single highest win rate archetype with Suni, the South Korean player, doing very, very well, getting through right up until the top 8 with his particular spin on Combo Priest, as well as his practice partner Physics King, who had an identical lineup, which led to, when they clashed, one of the more interesting matches of the tournament, where I believe Suni was fatigued for 16 cards lethal with Northshire Cleric. Some pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah, that was crazy. I love the realization when it was like, oh wait, he's dead. Like, that's it. But we do get the matchup now. It's going to be Priest versus Hunter, and I will say this is a very weird and interesting matchup because when you're against Priest as it stands now, you're always trying to work out what if they have it. What if they don't? What if they have half of it? What if they heal? What if they do this? What if they resurrect? But then Priest against Hunter always has to think, what if it's freezing? What if it's snipe? What if it's pressure plate, which is very good versus Priest right now? And also, do they have deadly shot? Do I play around deadly shot? So on, so on, so on. So both players, I think, in this matchup, are going to have to try and dance around what their opponents have. And whoever either A, takes the risk and it pays off, i.e. they don't have X, like it's not freezing trap. Whoever goes for that first, I think will just steamroll the game. But I don't even know who to favour in this one. It's such a weird matchup.
It is indeed. I think saying it as a dance is a good analogy for this matchup. Like when they go for the Cleric into the extra arms, that's kind of just like flailing randomly and you just lose. But when it's the more interesting matchups with the Divine Spirits, Inner Fires going for maybe a Psychopomp game plan later on.
More of a tango.
Exactly, yeah. The Hunter can keep up in that particular one. I would probably put the Priest slightly in the lead here, I think. Like, the Hunter early on does not have as much removal as, say, Rogue does, as a relatively comparable aggro deck. Because when I've been playing Rogue a lot on ladder, I've been kind of enjoying playing against the Priests. Because if you keep cards like Backstab, SI, Deadly Poison, just kill all their stuff. They can't get anything on the board, and that's when Priest really struggles. Yeah. Whereas I think for the Hunter, early on, it's a little bit less reactive, which I think it's all the worse for.
Yep. Okay, well, let's take a look at the list now, and let's see what is going on. It's going to be Shaxy's Priest, of course, and very strange deck to look at off the top because it stops at 4 mana. But that's all Priest really needs, because what you're looking at really here is the starts of the 1-drops like Ward and Northshire Cleric. The second they're not they're not answered, that 2 mana extra arms, which is going to be back at 3 mana very, very soon, is going to help snowball things, and then the usual Divine Spirit into either Topsy-Turvy or in a fire, which we've known Priest are capable of doing for a long, long time, basically means that with these Resurrects and Heals, you never feel safe as long as Priest has a minion on the board.
It's true. Extra Arms is a card I'm a little bit sad to see bite the dust in the recent waves of nerfs, because it's kind of an unfortunate victim, because it really, like, it's a card that deserves to cost like 2.5 mana, right? Like, it's too bad at 3 to see play, but too good at 2 a lot of the time. And it would be too confusing if the first half cost 2 and then the second half cost 3. But up against the Reno Hunter, which we can take a look at now, we've already seen it once from cheonsu, taking a very, very one-sided loss up against the Warrior from Shaxy at the start. But I think we'll see that against the Priest, which is very low value, topping out at 4 mana right at the top end, if it doesn't get demolished early on with big tempo swings from all the Priest healing and damaged minions, should be in with a pretty good chance.
Yeah, I imagine this is going to be kind of potentially a Wild West matchup. You know, when they go out for the shootout, and basically one player is the Priest on one side, he plays Cleric on one, and then cheonsu is going to play a Secret, and then they just stood there staring at each other and no one knows what to do. So maybe if that happens, things could get a little bit funky, because the Secrets are really going to, they're like perfect to mess with the Priest plan. Every single one just in a different way. So yeah, the matchup's going to be kind of weird, I think, but it will be explosive one way or the other, because one thing about Priest is it ends games very quickly.
It really does. When you give it, if you give them an inch, they take a mile. With the Divine Spirit and Inner Fires, it can get very, very scary. Whew, but speaking of scary for cheonsu, this hand is a lot more like it. Just a secret away, I suppose, from the dream start. But even then, like, every card in his hand is good in this matchup.
It's weird, right? Because my question, and you might call me crazy, is it ever worth throwing away Zephrys and the Hyena?
I don't think you can ever justify throwing away Zephrys.
Okay.
It's just too good, right? Like, especially against Priest, where you specifically need a lot of the time, like Shadow Word Pain or Silence. It's just ridiculous.
I was thinking like one extra card to get a Secret could be insane. Bless you.
Oh, I'm apparently allergic to Priest.
Oh, I thought you were going to say bad suggestions then. That would have been funny.
I did say that. What are you talking about?
So we have the Tolvirs available now. There's extra arms in hand, and most importantly, I think that Circle of Healing. But right now, even just Tolvir pass, it's a 2/3 even whilst damaged. So that, to me, that's just good enough.
That's an interesting suggestion, because it's weak to exactly Coin Bow or Coin Kill command, I think. And it's pretty bad against those. Like, if you get Coin Bow and you haven't gone for the Circle of Healing first, I think you'd be very, very sad as Shaxy. So I can totally understand why you'd go for it here. Like, he's very close to just going for the all-in kind of hand and pray there's no deadly shot. Until the Secret came down, and now it gets more confusing all over
This
again.
is it. Now they just sit and look at each other, because if he plays a spell, it could be Pressure Play, and the minion you just play the spell on dies.
Yeah.
If he attacks, it could get Freezing Trapped. If he plays a minion, it could get sniped, which is probably not the worst case, but it gets very difficult.
An all-doom standoff.
Hey, I got you, friend.
Right.
Okay, no snipe.
Snipe, out of the way. What are we looking at now? He could attack, but then you obviously would rather have done that first in case it's Freezing Trap, and then you wouldn't have wasted the buff. But I think there's a very good chance he just won't attack.
Yeah, does he pass and try and attack with the 1/2? Very, very tricky.
Does he buff the Tolvir? Does he ever buff the 1-drop instead, just to try and split his board up a little bit so that Deadly Shot is less punishing? It is a very tough series of turns he has to make. In the end, just spreading as wide as possible. cheonsu now with the possibility, if he desired, to go Coin Zephrys, which I think would pretty much always offer him Shadow Word Pain, were he afraid of the Tolvir getting out of control. Which, now that there's a Beaming Sidekick hidden behind the Taunt to kind of distract the Deadly Shot, I think is a much more valid thing to consider.
Also, as well, just a small note about Coin Zephrys is the ordering is if you play Zephrys first, it will not necessarily give you pain, right?
Right, because it doesn't know you have coin in hand.
Yeah.
He's smart, but he doesn't have much of a memory, does Zephrys.
It's Freezing Trap. And the perfect bounce for Shaxy, I think. Look, Shaxy's even surprised. He's like, oh, thanks for the extra buff.
Yep.
Sweet. But already, you can see how this deck just ends games. Like, there's the 2A. He has Powered Shield, Divine Spirit, 2 extra arms.
Yeah.
And, well, 4 extra arms, technically, I guess. And then, you know, just 1 Inner Fire Autopsy away from just killing his opponent almost. Like, it gets so insane so quickly.
Shaxy's still obviously expecting the pressure play, but it is worth remembering that the secret that cheonsu played, I believe, was just ripped off the top on the turn he played it.
It was Rat Trap. Yeah.
Right, so Shaxy knows it's a... well, I mean, he might make the read that he played it over another secret in his hand, but I think the base read you have to make is random secret. Like, you have no information on what it is.
If it wasn't
apart
kept,
from the
you
ones you've
can't
ruled
make
out.
any judgment.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'll take it slow.
Taking it very slow.
Which I do like. I feel like, from what I've played of this priest, if you try and force the issue or get a little bit hasty, and it goes wrong, you just lose the game. Like, I feel like the deck doesn't have much recovery outside of a Psycho Pump, specifically Resin something good as well. So when you start strong, which you often do with the deck, you need to know how to stay strong, stay ahead, and not fall off the board.
I think there's definitely a time and a place to go very aggressively all in. But I agree that generally players do that a little bit too aggressively when they can just take it a bit slower and not have any need to.
As long as slow is still moving forward with the game, it sounds good. And now, no pressure play.
Yeah.
So now Shaxy's like,
I think he knows exactly what he's looking at, because he's ruled out Snake Trap as well, I believe, by attacking into minions. So yeah, he knows exactly what he's looking at. Which means he can take out the Shore very easily, even fit in a heal without activating the Rat Trap. Which, honestly, is just pretty good. Still keeps this board very annoyingly sized.
Interesting now, though, isn't it? Where does the heal go? I think on the 2/2. Because you don't want to have 1 minion on the board, right? Because
it makes you worse for Deadly Shot.
Whereas it's... But I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head. I'm not sure what the total health is. Is it 6 on that other Tolve, the 4/5? Is it a 4/6 with full health? No, it's an 8.
Buffed.
So
It's 8.
sorry, it'll be a 4/8.
Unless the powered shield went on it as well.
In which it'll be a 4/10.
Which it didn't. Yeah, it didn't. Because they're both glowing, they both got the effect.
Just gets tricky which one, where you aim value and what you want to keep on the board.
It does indeed.
Because although this keeps 2 minions alive, it puts the Tolve on the right further away from high health total, which means it's less chance of just OTKing cheonsu.
Good point. And I think Shaxy at the moment is still, can be fairly sure that he's a ways away from OTK. It's more, less OTK, making a minion that can't be answered, which first of all I think means waiting until you see some kind of answer, because with a double keep in the starting hand, neither of which you've seen, you can start to rule out cards, I don't know, Hyena Alpha, which you'd keep at the start and would have played on curve there. I don't know, Animal Companion. You're starting to think removal cards at that point.
Probably other secrets you can get out of as well, because they would have just played them by now, I think. And now we're going to see the Deadly Shot. And that's the one Deadly Shot, because it is a Highlander deck. So, outside of Discoverables, Shaxy's got to be feeling not safe now, because he has no minions on the board, but at least safe from removal.
I'm not sure if I could pinpoint the exact moment where I became comfortable with the new art for Deadly Shot, but it's definitely happened at this point. I feel at home.
Yeah, I'm just used to it.
Exactly.
Again, I still hold the point. No proof that it's deadly, but
I must consider.
we'll see.
It's better than calling it shot.
Could get confused. It could get, again, the wrong artwork.
Yeah, exactly. Could be deadly though, for sure.
Now, this is where, again, I think a lot of people pin this priest on, oh, it's a silly deck, you play 1 drop into extra arms, buff it, then you're dead, GG. How do you win this game?
It's really tough.
Like,
yeah.
If you play both minions, which seems fine to me, then they get answered. You've got no minions, and without minions, you generally can't win a game of Hearthstone in most cases, and that is a good pickup.
I think this is generally a situation as priest where you play to... you need a draw. You need a good draw to win this game, and generally that's either Acolyte and Pyromancer or Northshire Cleric and Circle of Healing. Like some kind of big draw option is really what you're looking for, or Psychopomp. A lot of the time is good enough to get you over the finish line.
And Funnily enough, with Hunter on the table for cheonsu, Shaxy had Priest or Mage to pick. And like, what do you think of the choice now? Because we do have to start talking a bit more about these class choices, because it was, to me, Priest or Mage versus Hunter. Because I feel like Hunter's decent against both. But was Priest the correct choice?
Well, that's interesting because I think cheonsu also had good reason to go for the Warrior, because if he got Warrior into the Priest, he'd be very, very happy. That's like one of the best matchups, or one of the worst matchups for the Priest is the Warrior, because they just remove everything you can throw down, I find.
But if you got it into the Mage...
If you got into the Mage, it's a little bit worse. But then again, it's still Bomb Warrior. It's not the Control Warrior, which is very, very weak against all the value that Reno Mage can throw down. I think, having thought it through, I think both players made probably the best decision.
Okay.
Looking at the the 4 potential matchups they could have faced on average, this gives them the best of both. But then again, you can say maybe cheonsu should have realized they'd both come to this decision and go one level deeper and go for the Warrior to beat the Priest. It's an interesting level talk of kind of game theory and where you end up.
And it is just funny that it kind of does matter because there's a floating deck. We spent a long time about Conquest.
Matters.
Oh, it doesn't really matter so much because of you have to win with all your decks, so win's a win, a loss is a loss. But this, you don't. So this Mage, for example, from Shaxy is now floated. It's not won a game, and it won't win a game in this whole series now.
Absolutely. Oof. That's not what you want to see.
It's definitely not. One of the redeeming factors from Psychopomp, though, is one, it's a good card, and the res is good and can just be insane. Yeah. But even when you whiff, it does have Reborn, so it's a very awkward minion almost no matter what to deal with.
I mean, if this was a card on turn 4, it would still just be, even if this is the worst case scenario, it's not bad at all.
Really that's going to be the concede, and cheonsu takes the first match of the season, and he is very happy at that. cheonsu, I feel like one of the players who had a rough go of it in Season 1 overall, got to be happy about taking down Shaxy, who was one of the best players in Season 1, getting off that first week to a great record.
Yeah. Big upset there for Shaxy after his very dominant performance. One of the best players across all regions in terms of overall record at the end of Grandmasters Season 1. So I'm happy for cheonsu that he was able to take that victory there. I think, his kind of metagame thinking about what deck he should have gone for was generally fairly safe. And it's interesting to see that of the 2 players with their pick and ban strategy, Shaxy I felt like had the much more standard strategy where he protected Warrior, banned Mage, the 2 best decks at the moment,
Makes sense.
It makes sense to go for them. Whereas Shaxy protecting his Hunter, banning the Druid, maybe showing a slightly more liberal way of thinking about the game, where you're a bit more creative about your thought process, and it worked out well for him.
Yeah, it's one of the strange things, isn't it? Because we talked about Shaxy's 2 decks not lining up so great versus cheonsu's 2 decks that were left. But if Shaxy had a Druid instead, maybe that looks different. And it surprised me a lot when I saw the Druid ban come out from cheonsu, but it seems to have paid off, at least the way that series was shaken out. So that was just match 1 of the day. We've got what we decided was our feature match, which is going to be Surrender versus Samuel Sao coming right up. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right